Yeah, let's talk schedules because, man, when it comes to all that legal business, I've had about four of those discussions today. Iowa State are having their gambling NCAA investigation and things coming out there, and Jaden Rashada in Florida and whomever else might be involved. And I've had those discussions here. So I want to talk a little more football, at least to start. We'll get to the NCAA stuff as well. But as you mentioned, maybe this is the one way in which the ACC is trying to be a better marketer because we know they've been such a poor marketer of their teams and their sport in so many different ways, but they are milking the schedule release. Oh, we're going to show you the week one schedule. And then they've got another release. They had three different stages of this release, three or four. And finally, now I think we've got the entire deal. So we'll pull up the Florida State schedule for 2024. Anything, George, in particular that stands out to you?
Initially, I'm not sure. I've seen people say that the school wanted it this way and they're happy with how the ACC did it. Overall, you're happy, but it's a little bit of a surprise that you don't get a bye week right there for Labor Day. You think you'd be off for Labor Day, having three buys like that to work with. But they opted to go ahead and get the two standalone games. You've got Georgia Tech, obviously, in Ireland, and then you've got 9 days to get your butt back to New England to play Boston College on a Monday night. But after that, you get that bye week. I think that's the biggest, I guess, kind of thing to look at. Moving into the 12 playoff format, we add a bye week. So you had two bye weeks to start with, and then anytime you play that week zero game, obviously you have a game in the bag. So it adds a third. So the way this thing works out, you play two games, and then you get a bye week, and you go play Memphis. Then you have four games, I believe, until your next bye. Then you go on the road for another, one of those earlier release games against Duke. You play Duke on a Friday night. Those are always interesting. Having to go play some of these lesser teams that are kind of hungry. You got Manny Diaz coming home to Doak Campbell Stadium, I believe. That'll be interesting. But again, then you go ahead and play Miami, North Carolina, Notre Dame, and then you have another bye week. Then you got Charleston Southern and Florida. So there's no crazy runs on this thing. Really, the ACC, like you said, they probably could have been petty and really shoved it to us, but the schedule really, really sets up nice. I'm a little bit surprised that we play Boston College right there coming home from Ireland, but you do have 9 days with it being a Monday game, but it is just a little interesting they decided to do it that way.
This is my first look, so let's take it from the top. I'll give you my impressions. So, first and foremost, is playing two conference games by the time it's only September 2nd is kind of crazy because usually the schedule starts with non-conference games, although the ACC mixes them up to a certain extent. So there are week one conference games, and Clemson has played a lot of those, and Florida State have played a lot of those opening Labor Day weekend, Sunday night, Monday night games to showcase the conference. And I think that's a really good thing for the conference. So that's, again, one of the few things they've done right is showcase Clemson and Florida State on Sunday and Monday night the last few years when everybody who wants to watch college football has to watch the ACC. So that's a good move. But yeah, Georgia Tech, August 24th, that is an early date. And for that to be a week zero, for it to be across the pond, it's just going to be interesting, regardless of how good the game is. Georgia Tech's a decent team, okay team. They won a bowl game against UCF. Brent Key, I think, is a nice addition there as head coach. He's done a nice job in
Haynes
turning
King.
that program around. What's that?
I was just saying Haynes King. I agree.
Haynes King. Yeah,
Yeah,
Haynes
coming
King
back.
can play. And just a different setting. And the players, I think, look forward to that. Uh, experiencing a completely different country and sightseeing and kind of it's a juggling act for the coaches to be able to. They want the players to experience all that they can in a life, what's going to be for many of them once in a lifetime experience, to go somewhere like Ireland and experience all that, but at the same time make it a business trip and make sure, hey, We want to come back. We have to come back with a W. And so that's up to the coaches to figure out that scheduling portion of it. And then, they got to recalibrate. So they have the extra couple days coming back off the long trip to take on Boston College. Of course, BC gave the Noles fits in Chestnut Hill with Castellanos, the running quarterback last year. He's back. Memphis, that's a nice little non-conference game. Of course, they're not a Power 5, but Mike Norvell takes on his old team, and Memphis is always one of the best Group of 5 teams. They're coming off a 10-3 year. They won a bowl game against Iowa State. Cal, a conference game. That's weird to look at. Cal is in the ACC. I still can't get used to that. That's really odd. And then it's backed up by a trip to Dallas to take on SMU. And old buddy Rhett Lashley, who was the former offensive coordinator at Miami, who's doing a nice job at SMU. Of course, they won the American Conference last year and were undefeated in conference play. And so you got SMU. So you got another conference game against a very strange opponent. I do not remember, and I'm pretty good at this, George, of knowing who has played whom throughout the decades non-conference. And I don't remember Florida State ever playing SMU or Cal. I'm going to go to Winsipedia and double check myself.
I don't think we have. I think I would have remembered either one of those, but it's pretty funny that you have Rhett Lashley coaching SMU, and now as we get into it, I don't want to spoil it, but Manny at Duke. It's like you've got the head coach and one of the coordinators both coaching different teams in the ACC that just want nothing more than to stick it to Miami. So those are storylines on Miami's schedule that's going to be really fun to watch moving forward.
Let's see. I am just about there. Let's see. Cal and Florida State have never played. There we go.
Yeah. There may be an SMU somewhere like in the 50s or 60s when we first started, but I can't remember an SMU game either.
No, I guarantee that they've not played since 1980. I pretty much have everything locked in past 1980, and there we go. SMU and Florida State have never played.
Bam!
No previous matchups. None. So that's what strikes me crazy about this sport. It's unlike any other sport that you've got schools that have been playing football for 100+ years and they have never played. So I think that's kind of cool, even though Cal and SMU, they don't belong in the ACC, but that's what the
What
ACC
do you mean? Pacific Coast teams on the Atlantic Coast Conference?
Yeah,
come on now.
Crazy. Yeah, I'm old school. I'm an old man who likes.
It's the Any Coast Conference. That's what it really is. Any Coast Conference. The Any Coast Conference.
Yeah, the Any Coast Conference. I like that.
Gulf Coast, Atlantic Coast.
Yeah.
Pacific Coast. Doesn't matter. I guess we got to get us a Great Lakes team in there too.
Yes, got to get the north border of Canada represented by somebody. All right. Well, neither one of those teams should be a challenge, but they're not completely incapable teams, but they both went to bowl games. And so then we got Clemson, of course, the rematch of one of the best games of 2023, the overtime comeback. And who I should be embarrassed that I'm not remembering exactly. Was it Kalen DeLoach that delivered the
monster hit? Absolutely.
Yes. That probably made the season right there.
Yeah, that was one heck of a play. And then, of course, Keon Coleman delivering the dagger there in overtime. That was definitely an instant classic. We get them in Doak Campbell this season, so that'll be a big one. That's going to be probably the biggest home game of the year. Actually, we got Notre Dame at home this year. It's weird how them things go back and forth. It's a big home year for the Noles. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got Clemson, Florida, Notre Dame. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. Cannot wait. Well, am I reading this wrong? Maybe don't believe me on the home games. Yeah, but we definitely have Clemson and Florida.
Yeah, I think you might have some of the home road flip flop there. James, what's going on tonight?
What's going on,
Big
man? How you
game.
guys doing?
We got James here. This is good. This is good. We're looking over the schedule. I'm guessing you've done this a couple times. So
A little bit.
I'll finish my run through. I'm about halfway, and then we'll get to you, James, and we'll take it from the top. But yeah, old buddy Manny Diaz. That's interesting. And this is a kind of a sneaky, rough stretch in here. Actually, let's back it up. So yeah, Cal and SMU should not be issues. It's just going to be interesting to see those jerseys on the same field together. Like George and I were just talking about, those schools have never played. Clemson, Duke, Miami, UNC, and Notre Dame with 3 of those 5 on the road isn't necessarily a light touch. That's a pretty good run there. And then Charleston Southern, the scrimmage game to get ready for the rivalry game against Florida at home. So James, we'll leave it up to you. You can take it from the top and slice this up any way you want.
This is a schedule sets up for me to go ahead and do what I did this time last year, in which I encouraged a lot of other people to do it. And if they would have listened to me, they would have got much better deals. To go ahead and book your hotel in Charlotte, because it could have been worse. And it all depended upon the layout. And last year's schedule, it was basically the first month of the season is what dictated how Florida State was going to go. Their toughest games were in the month of September, and that actually boded basically to be true outside of losing to losing Jordan Travis after the North Alabama game, and still having to play Florida on the road, and them having to play Louisville in ACC championship. Most of the toughest teams are teams that you have more talent than, but will be coached pretty good. And I think those 2 tests will give you something to really and truly look forward to. And that would be Memphis and Southern Methodist or SMU. And I think SMU is going to have a much different type of offense, but still playing to our strength. They're going to run the air raid. They're going to try to throw the ball around, which is what they do a very good job of. They've got a lot of talent from the University of Miami and a few other schools, but that's their strength right now is they're going strength for strength. You got to remember, before the Georgia game, you're talking about a Florida State defense that gave up 4 passing touchdowns on the season. So that's something that I think at that point we'll have a lot of things gelled and rocking and rolling, or that's what you would hope. Then you got, obviously you have the Clemson game, but that's at home. But that's and that's a good, like I said, that's going to be all to me. Clemson will always be Clemson until we consistently prove that they're not. Clemson did a really good job of dominating the conference during our downtime, but I like that game. But I believe how we play against Southern SMU, if we dominate them in the way I think we should, I would feel very, very comfortable moving into the next stretch of the season. October is, I'll even go right there. So the 28th to the 2nd is the season. Again, the other part of this, and forgive me, anybody who listens to your channel, Mark, about SMU that's big on SMU football. I apologize for being ignorant to SMU football. I'm not 1,000% sure about them. I do know I like their head coach. He was the offensive coordinator at the University of Miami. The last time the game was kind of a little bit like was undecided. We had no idea what we were getting into. And Rhett Lashley, I like him as a coach, as an OC, but I still don't believe. I believe they'll scheme it up on offense to be able to get some things on our defense. I'm just not 1,000% sure they'll have enough to stop our offense. Obviously, I learn more as we get closer to the season, but that's just me on the surface of the schedule. Clemson, the guy that I feared the most, and it felt like he played forever, is no longer there. The running back, so he's out of there. So I'm grateful for that. Duke, I'm not even sure about Duke. You know, they're gonna have. I think Duke will be good. I just don't think. Now I think you know, a lot of people made a lot. A lot of people had a lot to say about Florida State's victory over Duke. A lot of very uninformed opinions as well. I mean, we talked about, oh well, Duke was winning before Riley Leonard went out. Like Riley Leonard was the reason why. A big long touchdown run had something to do with it. And Riley Leonard had been getting rocked that entire game. So it was coming. They hit us. They hit us really, really good, but I'm not sure. I can't say that with them losing as much as they've lost, as well as a head coaching change, that Duke's going to be the scare. Miami is going to be better than Miami has been because of where Miami has gotten better talent at. They're still really, really good on the lines. They still haven't gotten any talent at the wide receiver, and that's going to affect it. I think in a few years, those young wide receivers are going to be good, but they haven't really. Their DBs still leave a lot to be desired, and I think that's where they're still going to be weak at. And I think they'll try to play it a little bit differently, having a Cam Ward, which a lot of Miami fans fail to admit is that one of the reasons why the game was as close as it was because of how strategic they played offense. They ran the ball a lot more than they did try to throw it. They did not feel confident in their offense. If they were to try to come up and down the field consistently, they know it wouldn't have been it would have ended a little bit different. Or, you know, like I said, they felt like they could do that. They should have blew us out, but they know they couldn't do it. North Carolina, again, just like Duke, you're talking about a team that just lost a first round, what everybody says consensus first round draft pick. That's coming up with Drake May. It's definitely going to be a drop off. They have not played defense in the last 3 to 4 years. I think that helps us. Going into scroll down, Mark, please.
I'm asleep at the wheel, putting in some link from Den Media Group in the chat.
Nah, you're fine. Notre Dame, this is typically around the time where Notre Dame season flourishes or it ends. I don't really know what to think right now. I don't know the weather. People are going to pretend like acting like right now there's going to be blizzard-like conditions November 9th in South Bend. They've got Riley Leonard. They got a young man that was at Mandarin High School. His younger brother's now just signed to Penn State. But he was at FIU's all-time leading receiver at FIU. He's up there at Notre Dame. I think he's that game's interesting. I don't know. That's one of my games that I have worried about. Charleston Southern, that's good. That's a good not senior night game. That'd be a good game just to get a lot of guys in the Gators. But it's not a bad schedule. It's not a hard schedule either, though. Like I think Memphis and SMU will tell us everything that we need to know about these teams. If those are just eke by games, then okay, we may be in for a little bit of it might be one of those seasons where that's just where we're at. But if it's a game that we can come in and again, good teams win, great teams cover. If we're out there, we're covering the spread, which I would suggest we're going out there and we're winning by 2 touchdowns, maybe 3 scores. I think that would tell us that we got a really good ball club, and you know, Clemson and Notre Dame should be really weary of us. But this team reminds me a lot of 2022, where I got to go see that first spring ball practice so I can know how all these pieces are flowing together.
Like 22, but just a whole nother level of talent. but it's definitely a lot of unknowns, a lot of guys with no experience. Everybody's talking about, oh, well, Trey Benson didn't have any experience. Johnny Wilson doesn't have any stats. All he's done is block. So I definitely agree with James. A lot of striking similarities, but with a lot higher blue chip ratio as well. And when it comes to Riley Leonard, yeah, those Duke people act like the rapture came, and that's the reason he wasn't on the football field anymore. It's like, no, he was getting destroyed by that top, front seven. So yeah, I love that.
Well, I will be one that will I'll play it somewhere in the middle because I was here, of course, and I tried to I give my take. So I'm not a Florida State fan, and I'm not a Florida State hater. So Riley Leonard got knocked out of the game. And it was, I don't remember what the time was in the third quarter, but it was about midway through the third quarter. What's that?
Midway through the third, yeah.
Yeah, midway through the third quarter. Duke's got the ball at about the 7 or 8 yard line, something like that, 10-yard line, something in that range. And he gets knocked out either on second or third down.
Second.
He gets knocked out on second down. They bring in the other guy. Isn't Duke, are they leading and can go up 2 scores, or they're just barely down and a touchdown would have given them?
No, they were up. They were up. They would have went up. They were probably definitely going to end up with a field goal at minimum, which they should have still ended up with a field goal.
Well, they could have gotten, but they went for it on fourth down. Why they went for it on fourth down, I have no idea.
Well, I'll tell you, Mark. You know how coaches do it. Like when you're going up against a superior opponent that you got the best of, you're trying to go ahead and stack the points up. Their coaches knew that they weren't going to win that game, and they knew they probably had got the best of it. They might have been up by 2 scores at that point already. I think they might have been up 10.
I'm looking it up. Yeah, I thought they were up like 16-10 or something like that.
That might have been what it was.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It was just that point, in the game that we've done all year in the second half to where, they start to lean on you and it goes the other way, But yeah, they definitely could they had a better chance with him. But yeah, that's football and people get injured on every single play. It's like, yeah, we had an injured quarterback too, and we won our games, but not to get in that whole shit again.
No, I mean it's not to poo-poo on anything that Duke did. Duke was it's a reason why that coach is at Texas A&M right now.
Yeah,
like he's a good coach, and Riley Leonard was a good player. But like Riley Leonard's arm, like if you go look at it, even if you go watch the game, and we talk about presence, right? Presence means a lot. It does mean a lot, but I mean Duke wasn't lighting up the scoreboard statistically or points wise when Riley Leonard was in that game, and Riley Leonard would have definitely made the game more interesting. That other quarterback was not anywhere near prepared, which is part of the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying about Duke right now. Even though he'll be better because he'll have more reps.
Okay. Here was the deal. Yeah, midway through the third quarter, Duke's up 20-17, and they drove it to the Florida State 4. So they went for it. Yes, they went for it. It wasn't even 4th and goal. It was 4th and 3. And so this is after Riley Leonard gets knocked out. So Elko bypasses the field goal that would have put them up 23-17, still within a 1-score game. He wanted to go up by 2 scores mid to late third quarter. So, yeah, I get the risk. I just didn't agree with it. I would have agreed with it with Riley Leonard on the field, but I didn't agree with it with the backup quarterback on the field taking his first snaps in that environment against that defense.
I think it was also because like the week before when that young man had to play, he got I think he was like, it was crazy. Like he was like 3 for 12 or something like that.
Yes.
2 of which were touchdowns, and one of them like he was able to hit the guy like wide open, and there was a guy open. And what's wild is we took a big risk by bringing a lot of pressure on that play, if I remember correctly. But again, it's different. But like and I'm speaking on this confidently because I feel good about it. But I really have to I gotta see where we're what our team looks like more, because we have a lot more what ifs than we had last season. I mean, you had Jared Verse, you had Patrick Payton returning, who was the ACC Rookie of the Year on defense. You knew what you had in Fabo. You had an idea of what you had with Fisk. Farmer was starting to come around. You know, I'm curious, but I do know I think Manny's a better coach than what the Miami Hurricanes put off on it. But I also know that Duke is Duke, man. Duke still has some things that they've got to try to that they're working on to try to get better. But I think they're still going to be one of those good mid-tier teams in the ACC that will take a step higher, every few years. I mean, you got to remember, like, they have more ACC, no troll, but they have more ACC championship appearances and New Year's 6-day bowl games than a lot of teams that we're all saying are going to be pretty good teams this year.
Cal, SMU, and Stanford all have as many ACC championships as Miami.
Yes,
pretty cool.
They do. South Carolina's got one more.
How about
that? Before we get to something that James just said sparked my interest that I want to get your take on for both of you, but I got one more thing with the schedule, and this is not just a 2024 schedule thing with Florida State. This is my overall take on Florida State's approach to scheduling. I've got a lot of respect for it because there are only 4 or 5 teams in the country, if that have a rival out of conference that they have to play every year or choose to play every year. That, sure, Florida's down right now, but they could be a top 5 team in the country. They could be a top 10 team in the country, and they're usually a 9-3 team, pretty generally that kind of program. So they're playing a top 10 to 15 program in the country every year outside the conference. Now, most schools will take that and just say, that's our tough game. If you're Iowa State, you play Iowa every year. That's our game. That's the only one we're playing. We're going to pad the schedule otherwise. We could serve up a zillion examples like that. Kentucky does the same
you
thing.
took the words right out of my mouth.
Kentucky, they play Louisville. They refuse to play anybody else. Will not play. Now, Louisville will go schedule other teams. They schedule Notre Dame, of course, that's part of the ACC deal, but they'll go play some other teams in addition to Kentucky. But Kentucky doesn't play anybody up. They refuse to play anybody else.
That first FBS appointment catches hell 4 games into the season when Kentucky's totally fresh, like they're coming out of the off season, and that's part of how they've took it to Florida so bad the last couple of years because they play Florida and they're just completely fresh.
And I'll put USC and Florida State's basket of very few teams. They play Notre Dame every year. That doesn't make them hesitant in any way to go out and schedule another big time power team. So I appreciate that Florida State does that. They always try to go out there and schedule another big time program. So this year it's Notre Dame. And then on top of that, got to have some level of respect for Memphis. They're one of the top group of 5 programs. So that's not a cakewalk. For a lot of teams, Memphis would be a really top good game for them. So they're 3 deep out of 4 non-conference games, in my opinion. So I've always respected Florida State's approach to scheduling.
And you start a home and home with Alabama next year. It was kind of like when you looked at it this season, it's like, oh, well, I'm glad we didn't schedule one of those big out of conference, but it's like you got Notre Dame that's built in, like you said, you already play Florida. So you're still, play with Memphis 3 deep, but yeah, next year, that home and home with Alabama, that is going to be a lot of fun. Obviously Saban retiring changes that a little bit, brings them down to a little bit of earth a little bit. It'd be nice to get a couple wins over Bama. But yeah, that's how Florida State came up, and James can tell you all about that. That was Bobby's mentality, any place, anytime, anywhere, all that stuff. So yeah, I love it, man. And this one really is spread out. We get the Notre Dames, we get the game spread out. So I really appreciate it. 3 buys it's gonna be weird seeing how that works out for the health of the team, and getting rhythm, because a lot of times you see that team like really get its identity around the midpoint of the year and take off. So it's like you got 2 games, then 4 games, and 3 games, and then 2 more games at the end of the year. Really interesting to see how it plays up. plays out in the end of the day.
So
I actually
James,
kind of like it too. So I mean, 2 games, Georgia Tech, Boston College, not necessarily Ducks. Really, really like valid opponents. You get a bye week before you go play Memphis, who's a really good, solid team. Then you play Cal at home. Then you go to Dallas to play SMU, Clemson. You should be like that's a solid stretch between SMU and Clemson, 2 different types of ball clubs. Now you can go back. That bye week gives you opportunity to rest again, look at what you've done wrong, correct mistake, especially with a young team. It gives you more active opportunities for teach, tape, and learning. And then, honestly, I think that extra bye week is a little bit where it's placed at. I would prefer it to be a little earlier. And this is arrogance, but the reason why I feel arrogant is because, Mark, have you seen Florida's November?
oh yeah, absolutely, I have.
Like if Florida, that game would be at home, so I have a press pass. I have a sideline pass. I will go shake Billy Napier. I will hug Billy Napier if he is still standing at the end of that November. Because number one, they're just right now, and these teams will probably more than likely be that place when they play them. You have number 1 in Georgia. You have number 2 in Texas. You have they have Ole Miss right before they play us. And Lane Kiffin really wants that job. And Lane Kiffin's not going to take it easy. Like, if Lane Kiffin can get him fired, he'll do it. Like, he would do it with a smile on his face. He would try to run up the score. And I'm trying to think who they played before Ole Miss. I don't have the schedule.
LSU.
Sandwiched in there.
Is it at LSU or is it at least at Florida?
They're at home. But
Okay,
yeah, that's the 5-game closing run. Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State.
Everybody's in the top 20 on that on that run right there. Like that's not fair. Like that's like really like.
And those aren't biased top 20. Those are top 20 teams.
Yeah. That is tougher than like that schedule is tougher than anybody. Even if they're able to, so that's 5. So you play 12. So even in the first 7, if they're able to, let's say they beat Miami. I'm trying to think who else they have early. Like they got Kentucky early rivalry. They got Tennessee. Yeah. They've got
Texas A&M.
So luckily they've got. They don't play Bama though, right? They don't.
No Bama. UCF, Mississippi State. Like those are the worst teams that they play.
Their first half is't bad. Hey, look at their first half. Pretty easy schedule, and then you scroll down.
You're not a bowl.
I guess it's easy.
You're playing bowl. You're playing 4 bowl eligible teams. 4 bowl teams and 1 FCS. So right there, it's only one school that you just can feel like, man. You know what? I know we got Stanford. Like outside of that, man, that's tough, man. Yeah, and Florida's been depleted by the portal. They have had more. They've had just as many people enter the portal as Alabama and these other schools that actually lost their coaches. So it's a tough thing, and they haven't necessarily brought in. They brought in a pretty good linebacker from South Carolina, but that South Carolina didn't fight to keep him either. Right. So like, it's some things, man, that just are very interesting.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised they didn't attack the portal a little bit more aggressively, or maybe they did and they just struck out. But there was a lot of talk around that not happening last year, and then you really thought they were going to get after it hard this year, but nope. Seemed like a one-way ticket out of town kind of deal, which they had Manny Nunnery come back, which was good. And they were lucky to kind of get some of the guys back from that 24 recruiting class. But when the Bama situation happened, but that ain't going to be much help for this year. That second half of that schedule is going to be a gauntlet. And if you go into it 500 already, like they got to really hope they can get to, 4-2 or something like that before they get to that gauntlet if they want any chance of going bowling. But yeah, I just don't see any way. That's the biggest lame duck situation I've ever seen. Like, what's the win mark to get Napier another year? Is it 6 wins? Because I mean, look at that schedule. 6 wins would be like impressive as hell. So I want to say he needs 8 or 9 wins to keep it going. But with that schedule, that's not happening. Like there's
No.
So do you fire him now? Like what's the deal? He's not getting 8 or 9, guys.
I think if he gets 5, they'll give him another year.
I think if it's 5 and they feel good about his recruiting class coming in.
It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to recruit everything. I mean, just when you're going through that baptism, oof.